context, but the question is, do you want to?
Yes. How do I dream and imagine a different world while still having to face practical challenges in the current world? How to nurture future possibilities while attempting to exist and live in the here and now?
I think about this a lot in terms of finances as an artist. I think we all probably are in the same boat where we need to get an income, and that probably isn't coming from our art. And then it's like, when you do make art or you try and make strides in that area, you often won't have much money, and therefore you have limited choice. So what things can you sacrifice? I struggle with the fact of like I won't say any names, but I went to this I'm definitely not going to say some names on film. I went to this private dinner. I'm not going to say where. I've never been to that kind of thing in my life. And it was I was suddenly very aware. Obviously, I know how the arts works, but to see it all in one room was quite like scary. And I realised there were these like funders and individuals there who were propping up arts institutions a lot by themselves, giving away up to 100,000 per project, you know? And I think in the arts, like, there's this idea that, I mean, it's not like being in finance, right? Like, it's not about money, it's about art for all and all of these grand ideas. And then it's actually not like that at all. So I think it's really hard to try and set up something new in the arts if you don't want to compromise, maybe, on those values, or you don't want to play the game. So recently I've been thinking about how can one play the game and then use that to disrupt? And is that better than... Yeah, anyway, loads of questions, but that's what I thought when I came to this question.
But it was when I also proposed this question, I was thinking in a similar direction as well of how to continue creating and having space and resources if my income comes from somewhere else and not from that thing that I actually want to make and create. So that.
I think really, if we were talking about a proper alternative world, there wouldn't be funding for the arts. Artists would get paid like any other profession. You know, artists would get paid, and the social structures would be well funded and they would be well implemented. So we wouldn't be so preoccupied in artists engaging the public as a way of like covering up the cracks of a social system that doesn't work. You know, like I think if we're really thinking about an alternative, artists get paid like a regular job, and there's a proper social care system, and artists are not like
And I feel like I've seen a lot of competitions around the art of like apply to an opportunity and then you're competing with several people for the same opportunity of like getting some money, and it's it's very subjective of who also gets the opportunity, right? Like who's choosing based on what, and it's also, and I've been thinking of like, okay, why do we have to compete with each other? Like why do we have our ideas have to be, you know, like kind of in a race to see which idea is the best or which idea? Instead we could just like have our own ideas and build together. Right?
Yeah.
But for that, we all need this basic income.
Yeah. It's a very individualistic look, and I think the arts is set up very individualistically.
Also capitalist.
Yes.
Of like this like competition, the best will win, and but how do you?
Yeah, because that's not about failure and experimentation, which the art is. The art is not always efficient, right?
Exactly. It's all about success.
Yeah.
You have to succeed. Your proposal has to be the best, bestly worded, or the best idea.
Tell me what it's going to do in 20 words.
Yeah. Instead of like, hey, I'm experimenting with this, I'm exploring this topic, I don't know yet what will happen, but it's interesting.
Yeah. It makes me think about what the value and purpose of art is in our society, which I was thinking a lot when I was studying about like what, more than just like looking nice and making people feel things, like what is my purpose as an artist and to create art. And I think this question touches on it a lot, like the value and the purpose is to help people imagine futures that are better for them. So as much as I'm like, oh yeah, as much as you've said art isn't really about engaging audience, I think for me at least it should be, and it is all about how to engage people with the world that's around them in a way that like helps forward our society, because as we've spoken about in other sessions about capitalist realism, is the whole point of it is that you can't imagine out of it, because we unlearn imagination as we get older through systems that have set us up to essentially work a 9 to 5 and be very passive in life.
Yeah.
So I feel like what I'm seeing my art or creative practice is to make myself more active in the communities that I see immediately around me and address those societal issues. Like, for example, I was reading this book about June Jordan, who is an architect, she's an artist, but she worked with this architect in Harlem to imagine what Harlem could look like in like a really speculative way. She made these like crazy drawings of these like huge towers that almost look like rockets, and she was like, and everyone will live in this big structure, and there'll be libraries and everyone, and like that was really interesting because it makes people look at what's around them in a different way and start to critique it better, and critique it for their own lives. I'm not sure what my point was, apart from, I just put down a question of what is the actual value of purpose of art in society, just addressing those practical challenges I see more than like, how am I going to make money? If you come up with the value and the purpose, that's where the money is. Like, reimagining our future is part of architecture and urban design in my practice anyway, which is what the value is.
And I guess typically, if you really want to make the decisions what's best for the society, like a library in every place, and that's not going to be cheap, right? And you're probably not going to be able to find funding easily for that, I don't know. So those two things do often clash with each other. Sometimes. Most of the time.
Just to say it's 3 to 1.
Oh. What did you two think about when it came to this question? It's okay if you're not getting anything massive.
No, just there's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot trying to engage with everyone's words. I'm just thinking about how in the terms of like engagement stuff, it's very recent example because I've been watching Couple Therapy on BBC.
I love that.
Right.
I'm obsessed.
Okay.
I love it. Oh my god.
So I want this one like kind of immediate connection I had is that the differences between the psychiatrist there and kind of the work from my point of view, like what a poet, or I would say mostly poets, does is kind of similar. It's just in a different context. Whereas a psychiatrist is there to, in a very moment, like a liminal space where she will guide the people in the session through her language of guidance. And I feel like sometimes poetry is also in a sense of giving people the language they never had to express themselves. which is very similar functionality wise, but you see the drastic economic compensation you get from just right, like they're one is like deemed professional, the other one just deemed as pleasure, which is very different. So I can think there are a lot of occupation might come from in terms of tools and the means of communication is very similar, but because you frame it in a way like, oh, I'm an art therapist, you know, and then if you just say, I'm just saying here, help people make art, you know, like how you frame it is very important. In terms of selling where the value lays, right? If your value lays with helping the couple doing that, but I think if I say my poetry also does the same, does that, am I stealing the same? Can I get paid the same as the psychiatrist? You know what I mean?
Ooh, it's a really good point.
Yeah, so I think because I feel like a lot of arts are like that, like even with the sculpture art, theatre, there's an element of like people engaging it, finding their way with their life and then finding solutions. But some people think certain things that they create the hierarchy of consumption so that certain art deemed like a public good, so they don't have any value, like a monetary value, but something very exclusive. That's why scarcity creates value, right, in a sense. So yeah, that's how I feel at the moment.
Can we put the question back up?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what happened to the screen there.
Yeah, I feel like when I was thinking about this question in that sense, I was thinking about like world in terms of capitalism, but then also as an American, like there's just the current is not like there's just no 2 days are the same anymore in terms of the doom and scroll and like how do I feel so sort of disconnected and also deeply connected to what's going on, and how am I feel this like guilt setting that aside to write, because it doesn't feel like there is a future, which sounds very dark, but like how do you even reckon with that? But then hearing some of the like money with art, and I've been to those private dinners, I performed at those private dinners, but I also like I've set myself the challenge to read the ugliest material I have, and I don't mean ugly in terms of bad. I mean like I go and I like talk about bodily functions.
To kind of challenge.
Yeah, and to be like really curious about that. I don't know if that's led me anywhere, but it's certainly like felt necessary for me to do for myself. And I think because of that too, you talk about prize culture and like. And that is such a it plays a lot of mind tricks on me as someone who won a prize at 24, which paid my rent for 6 months, but there was a lot of like very strange imposter syndrome. I was writing from a very like unconscious place, and then and I had no intention of taking that anywhere, and I still don't. It's something I had to do for myself, and I submitted it on a whim. And I think that what that's also taught me is like, if I'm going to re-emerge and resubmit things, I'm developing 2 books at the same time, because I don't want to be expected for the next thing. Like I'm trying to write from this place of, I'm terrified to get out there again, because I'm afraid of the capitalistic expectation on the work, and then what that says for the work. And but then how do I dream from a non-capitalistic perspective as well? And that was very much like led to a bit of a breakdown in my mid-20s, which we're digging our way out of. Yeah.
At what cost, and how do you take the power back?
Yeah.
While also needing to pay your rent.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. Right. Wow. That was amazing. It went loads of different. Every time we do a question.